When I was a freshman in college, I took a chemistry class. It was really difficult for me. The tables were arranged in groups of 4. I sat at a middle table on the left side, all the way to the end, next to a guy named Lucas. He was very awkward. He gave me unsettling vibes. To describe his appearance, he was like 5'8", a little overweight, and had a really unkempt, patchy beard. But he knew his stuff in chemistry. I think he was just good in school overall. We started to talk in a pretty cordial way when he noticed I struggled in class, and I would ask him for help. He started offering to do my homework for me, and he even let me cheat off him on tests. I never got any kind of flirtatious vibes from Lucas, but that might have been because he was just too awkward to flirt in person. He eventually asked for my number so that he could send me homework-related stuff. Reluctantly, I gave it to him. He was helping me out a ton and didn't give off any threatening vibes. He just seemed a little reclusive. Fast forward to the last day of class, and Lucas did something completely unexpected. He asked me if I wanted to go on a date with him after class. I had no physical attraction to Lucas in the slightest, and our personalities were complete opposites. But he did help me throughout the semester maintain an A, so I had to let him down super politely. I lied and told him I was going away to New York for the next couple of weeks and wouldn't be around. He right away responded, "What about when you get back?" I felt like 2 weeks was long enough of a gap in seeing each other where he would probably lose interest. So I said, "Yeah, I could be around," or something like that. He responded with a really cringy cool as he nodded his head in response. From here till the end of class that day was really awkward for me. After class, I left straight for my car and drove right home. I was a commuter, not a dormer, so after the last day of class was over, that was it. It was Thursday, and my other friends who went to the same school wanted to go out that night, so we hit town that night. At some point, I got a text from Lucas. He asked, "When are you going to New York?" I told my friends all about Lucas while we were drunk, how he got me an A, but now he wanted a date. My friends joked that I should just go on the date with him to be nice. I joked back sarcastically, "Yeah, for sure." I told myself I'd respond to it later, but I was drunk and completely forgot to. The next day, I woke up to 2 follow-up texts, one with question marks, and then the next one, "You're going to ignore me now that you don't need me anymore, right?" So I replied, "Hey, I'm sorry, I was packing. I'm going to New York today." He replied almost instantly saying, "Okay." Obviously, there was no New York trip, but he should have never found that out. Later that night, my girls and I went out again. While out, I got a scary text from Lucas saying, "I thought you said you were going to New York tonight." I almost dropped my drink when I saw this. I showed it to my girls, and they were all freaked out just like I was. I replied to Lucas, "What do you mean?" And he replied, "Nothing. Forget it. I just don't like liars." I genuinely was scared that I was being stalked. I looked around the whole bar, but he wasn't there, at least as far as I knew. So what the hell? I just didn't answer at that point. I never planned on answering him again. It was until late that night, shortly after I got home, like literally taking my shoes off inside, that there were knocks at the door. It had to be like 1 a.m. I said, "Who is it?" And it was Lucas on the other side. He said, "It's me." I wanted to scream. I was home alone. I yelled through the door to leave or my dad would come out and kick his ass. That seemed to work as he didn't knock again. I texted everyone I knew about the situation. My family, all my friends. I was horrified. Some suggested calling the police. I said I would go to the nearby station tomorrow. But tomorrow didn't even come yet when I received a super long, disgustingly weird and creepy text from guess who. I was appalled when I picked up my phone and read it. This is what it said. "I'm feeling a lot of emotions right now after being used by someone for months, and then lied to, and hurt, and anger are 2 of them. I thought from the start of the semester in chemistry class that our chemistry was through the roof. No pun intended. I must say I am hurt that you would make up something as elaborate as a 2-week-long New York trip just to avoid going out with me. Even after I stuck my neck out for you all semester and risked my own academic standing. I definitely have noticed the way you looked at me sometimes in class, and I can't pretend there wasn't a hint of interest there. All I'm asking for at this point is for one date. That's it. I'm not asking your hand in marriage, though I surely would be quite an ideal husband to have if I do say so myself. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt that you needed more time to think over the prospect of going on a date with me. I know how much I have to offer, much more than these losers all over campus. If you want, I can come back to your house and we can talk about it in person. I am only making this offer once. I'm just very crushed to feel like I wasted so much this semester for nothing in return. Yours truly, Lucas. I sent this to everyone. I didn't care that it was 3 a.m. I called my dad until he picked up, and I told him how scared I was. After he read the text, he took it upon himself to send Lucas a lengthy text of his own, and he attempted to call him like 10 times, but Lucas was clearly too much of a coward to pick up that phone call. I also went to the police station the next day with the text, saying I wanted to press charges. One of the people working there said that Lucas would be contacted. Lucas never picked up any of the calls from the police who were trying to get him to come in for questioning, nor did he answer any of their text messages. Lucas completely disappeared. But my relief was short-lived. About a week later, I started receiving anonymous texts from an unknown number. They were vague at first, but gradually became more menacing. "I see you," one text read. Another said, "You can't hide from me forever." My heart pounded every time my phone buzzed. I knew it was Lucas. I changed my phone number, thinking that would solve the problem. It didn't. The texts continued, and now they were more detailed, mentioning specific places I had been. "Nice dress today. Blue is your color." The sheer thought of him watching me without my knowledge was terrifying. One night, I was walking home from a late study session at the library. It was dark, and the campus was eerily quiet. As I approached my car in the parking lot, I noticed a figure standing in the shadows. My heart skipped a beat. I fumbled for my keys, trying to get inside my car as quickly as possible. But as I reached the door, a hand grabbed my arm. I screamed and turned around to see Lucas, his eyes wild and unhinged. "Why did you lie to me, Emily?" he hissed, tightening his grip. "We were perfect together." I tried to pull away, but he was too strong. "Let me go," I shouted, hoping someone would hear me. But the campus was deserted. Just when I thought I was done for, I heard footsteps approaching. A campus security guard was making his rounds. Lucas saw him and panicked, shoving me away and running into the darkness. The guard helped me up and called the police. Lucas was arrested that night. He had been stalking me for weeks, planning to confront me when I was alone. The police found a notebook in his apartment, filled with detailed notes about my daily routine, places I frequented, and even conversations we had in class. Lucas was charged with stalking and harassment. I testified against him in court, and he was sentenced to several years in prison. The relief I felt when the judge announced the verdict was overwhelming. But the fear and anxiety he instilled in me took much longer to fade. Even now, years later, I still look over my shoulder when I walk alone at night. Lucas may be behind bars, but the memory of his obsession haunts me. I learned the hard way that you can never be too careful, and sometimes, the people you think you know the least can turn out to be the most dangerous. This happened so long ago that many details are a little blurry. It's not like it happened yesterday, but I'll try my best to fill in the smaller details that I don't fully remember with how I best remember things played out. It was the last day of school, and I was in the 4th grade. 4th grade was the last year in our elementary school where kids had to be picked up by their parents. 5th graders were allowed to walk home on their own. My mom would always be the one to pick me up on the last day of school. My friend Michael and I had a play date planned to celebrate the last day of school. Michael wasn't in my class this year, but we had been friends since kindergarten. He was in a different dismissal hallway from me. After school was over, we single file lined up and walked to the exit door at the end of the hall, where we waited outside by our teacher, Miss Harper. I waited for Michael's dad to appear from the crowd of parents shuffling in and out of the parking lot next to the doors. Then I heard my name. Ben! Ben! I looked over and saw a man waving at me. As he approached, he introduced himself as Michael's uncle and said he was picking me up. I went over to Miss Harper and said, "I'm being picked up." She asked, "Where is he, sweetie?" And I pointed to Michael's uncle, who waved at Miss Harper. Miss Harper dismissed me, and I went with the man. He led us through the crowd and was a very quick and jittery talker, speaking fast and with a bit of a stutter. He was walking incredibly fast. It was almost hard to keep up with him with my backpack on. He explained to me that his brother, or Michael's dad, was working later than expected, so he was driving me back. We got to his car, which was a dark blue sedan from what I remember, and it took me this long to acknowledge the giant elephant in the room. Where was Michael? Why weren't we picking him up too? The man turned to look at me in the back seat and said that Michael was already at his house. I was shy around people I didn't know, especially adults, and I wasn't one to openly speak my mind if I was confused. But I was very confused. This was making less and less sense. The whole drive, the man kept yapping, telling stories of his days in elementary school, asking me questions like what sports I played and what we were learning in class. If I had to guess, we were in the car for like 10 minutes, which, honestly, for our town where houses were right on top of each other, was a while. My house was a 5-minute walk away from the school. We were definitely in an area I wasn't familiar with when he parked the car in front of his house. His house looked pretty normal to me from what I remember. He let us inside and shut the door and locked it behind us. It was really, really dark inside the place, and I realized why. All the curtains were shut. It almost felt like it was nighttime in there, especially because the only source of light was a dim lamp in the corner of the room. He then looked at me and smiled. I said, "Where's Michael?" And he started acting really jittery and nervous seeming. He said something like, "Oh, I think he's downstairs playing video games. Give me a second. Wait. Here." He then disappeared into a nearby room, and I heard a door open and then footsteps descending into a basement. My heart was already racing. I knew I was in danger. I went to the door to quietly try to open it, but I couldn't. It had some kind of lock that must have needed a key. I really started to panic now, yet I still probably held out a little bit of hope that Michael would be coming up those stairs, but I knew the chances of that were slim. I regretted entering that house. I did the only thing I could think to do. I went to the kitchen and found a phone hung on the wall. I picked it off the receiver and dialed 911. The first thing I said when they answered was in a whisper, "Please come to this house. I've been kidnapped." They heard me. They acknowledged me, but I didn't say another word. I hid the phone under a towel in the corner of the room with 911 still on the line. I hurried back to where the man left me as I already heard his footsteps coming back upstairs. Then he called my name, saying, "Come down, Michael is down here." Then there was a pause. He repeated my name, and when I didn't answer, he came up the stairs fully to look at me. He asked me if I was okay. I felt so sick, and I was so scared. I hated myself for walking into the situation and not being wiser. I asked in a very scared voice if I could leave, and I remember the change in his face. His fake friendly smile disappeared as he realized that I was no longer falling for this. He walked closer to me in a gentle manner until he was close enough to grab my wrist aggressively and started pulling me towards the basement. I screamed and cried, and he screamed at me, "I'll let you go if you stop and behave." So I listened. I went down the stairs, and halfway down, the door slammed shut behind me, and I heard it lock. I walked fully down the stairs to this empty, unfinished basement with a concrete floor and one singular support beam in the middle of the room. There was a depressing yellow glow in the room from one exposed light bulb hanging on the ceiling. If there was a place you'd imagine kidnapped children to go, this would be it. I heard his heavy footsteps upstairs. You could hear everything in this house. I don't know what he was doing, but I heard him walking around for a while. Then he came to the basement door, opened it, and called down, asking if I was hungry. I replied, no. I didn't want him going into the kitchen and seeing the missing phone. He shut the door and locked it again. I sat down there waiting with my heart in my throat. Then I heard it. The doorbell, ringing 3 times from upstairs, followed by banging sounds, which were definitely the sounds of police banging on the door. I refrained from screaming until I heard the front door open, but I never heard the man's footsteps approach the door. The doorbell kept ringing, and I kept hearing the bangs. This went on for some time until I heard a really loud bang sound, and then multiple heavy footsteps and multiple screaming voices. I started screaming for help as loud as I could at the top of the stairs, banging on the door. The door was unlocked, and a police officer on the other side grabbed hold of me and hurried me outside. There were at least 3 cop cars outside. I had to tell everything to 2 of the cops outside as we waited for my parents to show up. The man from inside was brought outside and into a cop car in handcuffs, and that was the last time I ever saw him. When my parents arrived on the scene, my mom was bawling her eyes out. There had already been a whole scene at the school as cops were called, and Michael's dad realized what happened. This man was a work associate of Michael's father. When he somehow learned that Michael's dad would be picking up Michael and me from school on the last day, he seized the opportunity to do what he did. A complete sicko. I don't know how he found out what I looked like. As I got older, I never really asked for more details because I try not to think about it. My mom went to counseling with me for months after this incident. Let's just say my parents didn't have kind words for Miss Harper for not verifying if I actually knew the person picking me up. If I didn't think to call the police before he basically threw me in that basement, I know for a fact I'd be dead right now. This was like 17 years ago. That man might be out of prison for all I know.